All right, I call this June 1st Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 1 p.m. Moving right on to item 1.1, are there any items to be added to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on to item 1.2, the adoption of the agenda. Do I have consensus to adopt the agenda? That's unanimous. Move to item 2, adoption of previous minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting held on April 5th, 2026. Are there, April 7th? Are there any errors or omissions noted in those minutes? Seeing none, we do have consensus to adopt the minutes as presented. Councillor Blatz, and that's unanimous. Great. We'll now move on to item 3, presentations and delegations. For item 3.1, we are joined by Bill Hall and Rhonda Dodd, representing the Mountain View Museum and Archives. You'll be speaking about their 2026 report. And welcome. After your presentation, the committee might have some questions for you, but until then, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hard to see everybody. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and Administration. Oh, right. We'll make it. Can you hear me now? Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and Administration. As you all know, I chair the Olds Historic Society that operates the Mountain View Museum and Archives. I'm joined today by Rhonda Dodd. We're here to do a first report based on the new 2-year agreement that we have now with the town of Olds, and we're very grateful and appreciative for that support. We'd also like to thank you, before I get into the report itself, for the replacement of the furnace that cratered in the building. The old furnace on the main floor cratered, and we weren't actually entertaining visitors for a few days because of that, and I thank you very much for getting that looked after. And I have a huge shout out from yesterday. I got a hold of a lady on the emergency line, and she helped us mitigate a flooding situation in the basement of the museum. It was backing up over the curb last year when we had the torrential down, went over the sidewalk and flooded the museum. And due to her great work, and we were able to thanks. We can. So, exact approach, the reporting. I want to enhance this report with some numbers from 2025. This is year to date as of end of April. So in 2025, we had 1,536. Some numbers from 2025. This is year to date as of end of April. So in 2025, we had 1,536 visitors signed in, which was up from 2024 by 300 people. And that visitor sign-in is the best log that we have for visitors. It was probably quite a few more because a lot of people don't sign in when they come in the door. The second part, the school program participation. Our museum is open to classroom field trips, and these are booked through Chantal, our museum manager. But these are very dependent on teacher and curriculum. But we do have 2 booked for the early part of June. And we also have a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, who do tours and summer programming with us. So and we do offer stuff for schools. So the public programs and events in 2025, the museum hosted a total of 21 public events, which included Spring Fling, Bike for History, Halloween Howl, the Wild Art Show, the Perennial Plant Exchange, and many others. And then 2025 was a very special year for the Museum and Archives, as we hosted significant milestone events, including the Kiwanis 70 years, the 100-year anniversaries of the Olds Golf Club, the Olds Elks and the Mayfair Cinema. Each of these events were marked with special exhibits. Also in our evening museum, and were there. Also in our public engagement, when we have a senior outreach program, our museum runs a museum in the trunk, and we made 2 visits to Seasons Encore and 5 to Olds long-term care, and I was pleased to get into a couple of those myself. So it's very, very popular. We fill the room at the Olds long-term care. Grant funding. Grants. A total of 8 grants were written in 2025, and unfortunately we were unsuccessful in all of them. We're doing some work on our grant writing, and as presented, we have received 2 grants already in 2026. We will continue submitting grants, including to the AMA, which is the Alberta Museums Association, in the fall. Under self-generated funding, our donations tracking has shown an increase year over year from 2024 of only $250 a month at the door to over $286 per month in 2025. We have purchased a new scanner, which we can use to reproduce photos and documents, and patrons are happily paying for this service. We get people phoning from all over the world asking for research. Our archivist is able to pull those documents up and scan them, and they're happy to have these old photos from the 1920s and stuff sent their way for a fee. So we are trying to find as many revenue streams as possible. As you all know, there's shortcomings in every nonprofit, and that is one of the things we did was get the scanner started and get our program up and running. Our archivist in 2025 had 26 extensive research requests in which patrons pay and make donations. We received and processed 22 total donations, including 2 huge, significant ones from the town of Olds. When you guys moved from your other location, we have now got those 2 archived for research for residents and people in the county. She also had 14 transfers that were completed out of the museum collection into the archive. That is a process where information was accepted into the museum itself as a relic, and isn't really a relic, it's archival stuff. So those transfers were completed, and she had a further 14 donations cataloged from specific years. So what happens is stuff is donated, and prior to our staff that we have in place now, including the professional archivist, this stuff was in boxes. So all of that had to be sorted, it had to be cataloged, and it had to find a home so that if you come in and want to know something about Harmattan, you'll find it in the Harmattan file and not in a box on a shelf. So that's a significant work by the archivist. Yeah, I think in 2025 we sponsored 7 Art for Fun and 1 historic crafting class. Our education center is open for booking during museum operating hours and was utilized by the Special Family Voices and the Olds Art Club in 2025 many times, and those partnerships are continuing. The EC is also utilized for our events such as Spring Fling and Perennial Pant Exchange, and as you are all familiar, we have the Buy a Brick campaign, which we hope to at some time connect that education center with the museum itself so that we can rent it out after hours, because that allows washrooms and access to washrooms and water. Okay, the next slide, volunteerism. We put that in to make note that our board has increased from 8, we're up to 8 people now from the 5 in 2025. So obviously we're hoping to garner some fresh ideas, especially around fundraising. We are in the development stages of a fundraising committee, and as you know, cutbacks in funding have been received and that have left shortfalls to our budget, so we have to find other ways to fund our activities. I think that was it for that slide. And these are just information that they show our metrics of people visiting our websites, where they are located in the world, and that kind of stuff. The next 2 or 3 slides. And we get calls every week to do research for people. We're becoming quite a hub due to the fact that we're one of the rare places that has an archive in central Alberta. And that's our event calendar, so those are all the public events and everything that is planned and set up. I don't know if you had time to read through our strategic plan. This was adopted, and the reason behind it is so that we have a 5-year outlook. And second of all, in order to qualify as a certified museum and archive by the AMA, this is one of the requirements. If you have any questions on it, feel free to ask me about them. But that was included so you folks know what we have been doing as a board behind the scenes. And fortunately, we had help from this because we have a working agreement with the Red Deer College. I don't know if any of you know that, but we have an internship program that we partner with Red Deer College, and this was all of this plan, once the board had it in place, was actually fleshed out by one of our interns, and he did a fantastic job, as you can see. So, anyway, Rhonda, do you have a couple things you want to say? Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. I've already been introduced as Rhonda Dodd. And I just want to touch base on a couple of things today. You can probably see that Bill and I are very passionate about the museum. We want to keep it open. We want to keep it up and running. And we feel that the Mountain View Museum and Archives shows consistent progress in the last 2 years in all metrics, from the visitors, the volunteering, the funding. So the grant funds that we get from the town, we put towards the wages of our 2 permanent part-time, qualified, well-educated employees. So the other grants that we apply for, and we've gotten some grants, they're go towards projects. They don't go towards wages. So they're very helpful and very generous, but we still need to make payroll. In the near future, we're hoping to secure grants for updating the lighting, the flooring, and the restoration of the original windows. Right now, we've got a grant to do our signage. We're changing that so it includes archives, because that's very important. Our small museum is rare that we have an archive. And I know some of you have done the tour with Chantal or Gerda. You've been behind, you've seen the archive, you see what's there. So it's important for us to keep that. They're the historical records, the documents, the photographs, the maps, other materials, and they're all preserved there to tell a story of this community. So it's rare to find that in such a small museum. Our team, which follows the guidelines and regulations of the Archive Society of Alberta. So it's a numbering system, if any of you know archives. It's a little bit complicated for me to explain because I don't really understand it. But whether you're researching your family history or completing a school project, or you just want to learn about your local history, you can contact our archivist, Gerda, and she will help you out. She's very good at getting back to people. She also volunteers, or she trains our volunteers to be archive assistants. And our manager and our program coordinator, Chantal, is a very busy lady. So she was instrumental in creating that themed museum that we have. So every year we have a new decade. This year you've probably heard it's the 70s. And she also hosts events in our gallery every 6 weeks, which she showcases all local artists, local authors, community clubs, organizations. And she is responsible for all the programming that goes on. which is it's a lot of programming. It's on every week that she's doing programs with the kids. And she also goes off site to do program. She does a museum in a trunk. She does oral histories from local seniors, and she does lectures with local community groups. So, in conclusion, the Olds Historical Society looks forward to continuing a partnership with the town of Olds as we truly appreciate our building and our funding. So, thank you for allowing us to speak today.
Thank you very much. It's great to see that strategic plan. Do agree with the value that we see there. Do any of the members of the committee have any questions for the delegation? We'll start with Councillor Cook.
Thank you very much, and through you to the chair for either Bill or Rhonda. Bill, you'd mentioned that there was 8 grants that were applied for, and none of them were actually received. Obviously, you're trying quite hard, but what were some of the reasons that the grants didn't come through?
A lot of those I can't answer to, other than there's a shortfall of funding everywhere, including through the AMA. One of the grants that we wrote for was a community enhancement fund, and there were some qualifications there we didn't meet. We approached Mountain View Power last year for as far as lighting and carpeting, and we asked something about the furnace as well. We wrote a grant on that and never received it. We were just told no on a couple of them, and no, a lot of times they don't give you a reason. That's correct. I have the same problem in our dog rescue world. So, yeah, they say no, sorry, the funds have already been distributed, and that was in the case of one of the. We approached the county. I'm not sure you're aware of it, but we've had talks with the county asking for increase in funding, and we sent them documentation, and they gave us a lead on a grant, and they said they were full for 2026, and that they would be giving us a round of they would review it again in early 2027. So we still may qualify for that, and we're hoping, of course, to get the lighting or the flooring fixed up in the building to be more welcoming for visitors.
I think that we've learned from our other grants that we haven't gotten. So quite often we're late in getting it there, or we're missing one little thing. So each year we add to our list of grants that we're applying for, because we're going to try again, and we're going to keep trying till they give it to us.
And that's especially with the AMA. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Alberta Museums Association, but their funding was cut right back. They used to have about 10 employees. They're down to 4. I was at a Alberta Heritage workshop. They are trying to, so there's a Heritage BC, there's a Heritage Saskatchewan. They're trying to get a Heritage Alberta off the ground, where they're looking after historic buildings, because right now there's no voices for historic buildings, and they're being ripped down instead of being moved off site or whatever. So there's big plans through the province of Alberta to get the Alberta Heritage going. And the AMA, their granting funding dropped again this past year. We are going to apply, because there is one that does cover partial wages of the employees. That's the only one I know of that can be aimed at wages. Yeah.
All right, Councillor Krush and then Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to the delegation. When we did our tour, I found the archives fascinating, going through and seeing all the, places that you're familiar with and what they looked like 70, 80 years ago. You said that you're one of the few museums that actually has an archive. My question is, does the AMA look at the museum with archives in a more favorable light, and why don't other museums contain archives like yours?
Well, the smaller the museum are quite often run by volunteers, so they don't have an educated archivist there. So they are collecting donations, but they're not being archived. And that's the difference, is that everything in our archive file has a number. So again, you can go and you can find it. You're not just looking in a box.
Yes, and a lot of the smaller museums, their archival material goes to the Royal Alberta Museum. So there's Red Deer, Calgary, and Olds have running and up and running archives. So a lot of information from, say, Sundre or Harmattan goes to Edmonton rather than staying locally. So in order to research, you have to contact the Royal Alberta Museum to get your information. So then that's can be quite a runaround.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Do you still, are you still allotted a casino, like for fundraising? Like I know for a while there, it seemed like casinos were really hard to get. So are you still in the queue for a casino working night?
Yes, if you noticed in our wrap up last year, we had nearly 30,000 in casino funds into the coffers at the end of 2025 because we had our casino in September. Prior to that, though, because we're in the Red Deer area, you only get one every 3 years, and until they built the new Red Deer Resort and Casino, our casino funding was 17,000, and unfortunately that is spaced over 3 years. So that only, we had that was lovely that we got the 30,000 this past year, but that only contributes to having 10,000 for 3 years. And then you wait, and who knows what the next one will be like. But
Supplemental.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. So you going to Red Deer, if you were going to go to Calgary, there's a certain criteria if you go to Red Deer or Calgary? In Calgary, my understanding is you get way more money from the casino than in Red Deer. Has that changed? I know there was quite a discussion regarding the lack of equal balance of money where it goes and whatever. Do you know if that's changed a bit?
not at all, Marianne. The AGLC governs all of that. We are fortunately we are locked in with how they run things, and we are in the Red Deer region, so we get Red Deer region casinos. Unfortunately.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to the delegation. First of all, compliments on your presentation today, and I'm very impressed to see the input and the time that your volunteers are taking to in the increased exposure through your Facebook page and your social media. And even when I went on to, prior to the meeting, I went onto your own website through the Town of Olds and clicked the hyperlink, and it took directly to your own web page, and I'm very impressed with that. That's really great to see, and I'm happy for that. The other comment that I wanted to make, I also noticed that you are partnered with the Olds Moccasin House, which is really great because that curriculum has been removed from our school system, and I think that's really a terrific partnership with those folks because they're a very important part of our history. And to have something now, as I was not able to come on the most recent tour, and I haven't been into the museum for a while to look around. I know I need to come. But so is there a section on the Indigenous?
Our work with them is usually around Indigenous Day, so September 30th is where we have partnered with them to make sure that we have a display, and we entertain school groups on that. We've entertained school groups prior to that day, so that they have a feeling of what it was like back in that day and age. Another thing that we launched our first fundraiser this year at the Legion. So that was another one of the things I forgot to mention earlier, but we had a 70s groove party at museum. I don't think we'll do a 40s groove party when we celebrate the 40s next year because I don't know if there'd be enough people around, but that was a very successful first attempt at something a little bigger, and we're hoping to make that an annual event.
I just wanted to mention too that when I talk about a tour at the museum, you don't need an appointment. It's nothing special. Gerda and Chantal invite every person who walks through the door to a private tour, which means the archives, which means the storage downstairs, the artifacts. So if anyone gets a minute in their day, go down and see it. It changes the way you look at the museum. Unfortunately, some people think that the museum is just there to store our antiques. It changes every week. That's how busy Chantal is. So do go have a look, get a tour. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And through you to the delegation. Yeah, lots of positive steps in the right direction. Certainly the initiatives you guys are undertaking. The fact that the town has been able to commit to, I think it's 40,000 a year for the next 2 years, lends itself to some stability for the museum and the Historical Society. Because as you know from past discussions, sustainability, the financial longevity in this case, of the Museum Historical Society is an ongoing discussion point. And I believe with the 40,000 grant from the town, that's about half of your budget, I believe. And I'm not sure, I think the county was always in that 6,000 range. And you've addressed some of the county funding there. But I'm just wondering your thoughts either off the cuff or the board, and I know you've just got your strategic plan underway, but a consolidation of museums in central Alberta, because I remember reading in the paper from Olds to Sundre to Didsbury to Carstairs, all those museums are under financial stress or duress. Is consolidation and perhaps a single museum for the county something that could be entertained, feasible, possible, or not even on the radar at this point from your guys' perspective? Thanks.
From our perspective, no, Darren. A lot of people when they're researching local history want to go to where they're closest to and familiar with. We do and are members of Carmen, which is the Central Alberta Regional Museum Association, and we try to do marketing together. We have a program, if you get onto that website, where you can take a picture with yourself visiting each of these other museums and enter into draws that are provided by the Carmen. I've been to their annual meeting the last 3 years to make sure that we are heard because a lot of times, some of the bigger players in the market kind of dominate, but we're there to be heard. And we're finding that the regional marketing is a good tool, and there hasn't been talk at that table about trying to have a regional museum because Carstairs has a very active and very large museum as well. We have ours and we have an archive. To put those 5 or 6 museums together in one place, where would you put it? And that's kind of the question that everybody has had when approached with that.
What town wants to take it on? A bigger, better museum? Would the county? I doubt it. And people like to come in and they'll look at a picture and they'll go, oh, there's my great aunt. They're from Olds. So if we moved all that to Carstairs, it probably wouldn't happen. I know it's a silly little thing, but it's important to keep local history local.
Mayor Daley and then Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to, this may be either to the delegation or to the CAO. You mentioned the furnace repairs that had to be done. You mentioned lighting and flooring and so forth. Has there been a evaluation, a thorough evaluation on the facilities been done to see what we're looking at going into the future that kind of gives us the heads up on what may need to be done to keep that building operational? being that it's a town asset, I'm just wondering if either CAO Williams or yourself to answer that.
We've had quotes for the flooring and the lighting. The building itself, I don't believe it's been assessed in a couple years by anybody by their department. I know that we're working on replacing the roof over the office addition that's on the one side. But the furnace was the big one because I think it was close to 50 years old. So unfortunately, it gave up the ghost. Brent?
Anything to add, CEO Williams?
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, no, we have not done a complete facility life cycle on that building. We only have really, I think, the Sportsplex and to a lesser extent the Aquatic Center done at this point. But as we move through our asset management program, facility life cycles across all our holdings will be done. Museum being probably our oldest building in our facility catalog, so we'll certainly add that to the priority list when the time comes.
Thank you.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I agree. I like the museum because I feel that we need to continue to remember the past, the good and the bad, and like to celebrate those two things. I mean, and not to forget the bad stuff that has happened because we don't want to repeat it. So I do believe museums have a very valuable position in our community. So I thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Councillor
Mary Ann.
Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the delegation. I just have one final question. And I know you got your strategic plan and direction that's just been launched and continues to be massaged and worked on. You talked about the events committee and your 4 pillars of direction going forward. But again, from a revenue perspective, the last budget I saw was, I think, I don't know, about 80,000 for the museum. What would be a target that you guys would be satisfied with, or have you gotten there yet in terms of internal revenue versus dependent on the town or the county and that sort of thing? Do you have any idea?
Oh yes, of course. Because we get 40 from the town. We've approached the county. We haven't heard back what they're willing to bump because it's been maintained. Of course, you know that, Darren, for 12 or 15 years at 6,000 to every museum, whether they're Sundry or whoever, right? So we did approach them. We've asked them to consider an increase. That way we can cover some marketing, and of course marketing, we can get more visitors, and more visitors mean more donations, right? So we do have, so we know we have 46. We got about 10,000 from the casino, so you're looking at 56, right? So you're left with 24,000 on an $80,000 budget. And of those, if we can get an AMA grant, of course that shrinks that down. And any grant that we get shrinks that down. But if you take the 80 and take off the 56, you're still at 24,000, which is a steep hill for some older folks to try to fundraise for. But that's where we're at. Okay.
All right, with no further questions, I thank the delegation. Bill Hall, Rhonda Dodd, thanks for your time today.
I thank
And
you
the information given was
entertaining
very
us.
valuable. Thanks. I'll now ask for the motion. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I move that the committee accept the Mountain View Museum and Archives presentation for information.
And the vote. That's unanimous in favor. Thanks. That moves us to 3.2 Corporate Services Q1 report for 2026. And I'll ask CEO Williams for introductions. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My pleasure to introduce in his inaugural presentation to Council, Director of Corporate Services, Alvin Alim. He's been with us coming on 3-4 weeks now, and he's chomping at the bit to let you hear all the good things he has to say. So, over to Alvin.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Deputy Mayor Taylor and and Mayor Daly and Council. Today I'm presenting the first quarter update for corporate services for the period ending March 31st, 2026. For this particular slide, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, except to say that corporate services has made up of 9 full-time equivalents or FTEs and comprised of 3 core functions, which are finance, people services, and information services. Perfect. Thank you. Next slide. For Q1, there were 3 projects that were completed. The first one being e-billing, the e-billing implementation for property tax. This initiative will allow residents to receive their tax notices electronically instead of a paper copy through regular mail. While uptake has been slow, continued promotion is planned with a target of achieving adoption levels comparable to utility e-billing by 2027. The second project is the year-end audit. I was not present for the year-end audit, but speaking from experience, I know all the work that goes into this process. So I would like to congratulate the finance team who's involved for their effort in getting an unqualified or clean audit opinion for the town's 2025 year-end financial audit. And the third project is the new firewall. To continue our efforts to improve our IT network security, reliability, and system support, new network firewalls were installed at all town facilities. The slide talks about some key performance indicators for property taxes and utilities. I've taken the liberty of highlighting 4 of them that I think that are important to council. The first one is the tax base. So the tax base is the split between residential and non-residential taxable assessment. And as you can see, there's a slight increase in the residential to the non-residential ratio. For the tax collection, the tax collection rate is the percentage of property taxes collected in the year. The town has a rate of 95%, which is better than the benchmark of 90% set by Municipal Affairs. The percent of debt limit used. The percent of debt limit used, there were no additional debt in 2025, and we also made some debenture payments on our existing debt, which improved our unused debt limit from 65% in 2024 to 51% in 2025. And the last one, the debt service to revenue. This is the annual principal and interest payments made in relation to revenue received. At 6.59%, we are well below the benchmark of 20% set by Municipal Affairs. This slide talks about the key performance indicators for property taxes and utilities. And again, I've highlighted a few of them that I thought would be important for council. The first one is the e-billing. This is the one I talked about initially, the beginning there. It's new for 2026. And so far we've had 4% of our residents sign up for e-billing. For taxes receivable, the amount outstanding for 2026 is $419,780, which is a decrease from 2025. This shows that our collection process is working, and this amount represents the taxes carried over from 2025, as well as those that are on pre-authorized payment plans. For utilities, the PAP payment plan went from 43% in 2025 to 44% in 2026. Again, this represents more of our residents signing up for the pre-authorized payment plan. And for e-billing, it increased from 59% to 66%, showing again more of our residents signing up for e-billing instead of a paper copy through the mail. For grants, we've submitted 5 grant applications. We're waiting on award for 2. We've received 2 successful grant applications, and the total value of those 2 was $426,067. The 2 grants that were successful, one is the DEMS, the DEMS, that stands for Digital Evidence Management System, for $26,067, and that those funds will be used to fund the body-worn cameras. And the other one is labor market partnerships, or LMP, and the total for that grant was $400,000, and that grant will be used to provide the funding for the supply chain competitiveness development strategies. For procurement, we submitted 4 RFPs in 2026, and we've awarded 4 for all 4 of them. And I've listed them for council. They are the mobile column lift, the public works half-ton, the facilities half-ton truck, as well as the utility service truck. For people and information services, we've had 10 recruitments, 19 onboarded, and 11 internal transfers and promotions. For our IT tickets, so far we've submitted 230, 219 have been resolved, 14 of them are still open, and there's 3 that were counseled or didn't require any action from IT staff. Now getting to the financial reporting, the operating summary. So first, the 2026 approved operating budget is $39 million. And I just want to mention to council that that is a consolidated budget, which includes the tax-supported and the rate-supported budget, and the rate is the utilities. So for in total, $3.6 million in revenue has been collected, which represents 9% of the budget, and $6.4 million in expenses has been spent to date, which represents 16% of the budget. I also like to go on to say that as a benchmark, we would expect expenses and revenues to be roughly 25% for the first quarter, assuming they were incurred uniformly. However, that is never the case, because certain revenues like property taxes would be recorded when they're billed in May, and for expenses such as snow removal and lawn maintenance, those are seasonal. So typically you'd see peaks and valleys throughout the year, but this and that's what our actual budget represents. It represents the actual that's been incurred, and it's not on an accrual basis. So for the tax-supported budget, the revenue we've collected is 13%, and the expenses is 16% of budget. So the overall budget for tax-supported to date is 18%. So we're well below that 25%. You will see this activity pick up in the second quarter. For utilities, the 2026 approved operating budget was $9.8 million. We have $2.34 million in revenues, which represents 24% of the budget, and $1.31 million in expenses, which is 30% of budget. What's important that I want to point out for council is the average percentage loss. As you can see, there's been a significant improvement from 2025 for water. We went from 26% to 16%. And for wastewater, from 26% to 20%. The capital summary, the total approved capital budget for 2026 is $4 million, which represents a total of 20 projects. 12 projects are in progress, 2 projects are completed, and 6 projects have not started. The 6 projects that have not started is the fencing, the rotary scoreboard, the brine headers, the Sportsplex life cycle, hot water and recirculation pipes, and the evergreen roof replacement. Those are the projects that have not been started yet. For council remuneration, so far for the first quarter, council has incurred 20% actual to budget or 80% remaining on the budget. So you're well below budget. And you're also well below the 25% threshold for the first quarter. So looking ahead, there are 3 initiatives that's taking place in corporate services. One is our draft long-term financial plan. This would include reporting for financial forecasting, our policy development, as well as integration with budgeting. 2 is our capital planning documents, which will be linked to our asset management plan. And the 3rd is establishment of our customer service standards. And that concludes my presentation for the first quarter.
All right, thank you very much, Director Lehman. Let me take this moment to welcome you to the organization formally. Thanks. Do any members of the committee have any questions? Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I have 2 questions, if I may. Just one at a time? We'll see.
One at a time.
9, in your report, you said you had 9 full-time people in your department. Do we have 9 full-time people in that department, or are we waiting to hire people yet for that department?
Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Overwater, we do have 9 currently, and we are just about recruiting. Sorry, we are reviewing the applications for the IT coordinator. That closed today.
Councillor Krush, then Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to either Director Lim or CAO Williams. 19 employees onboarded 2026. Can you just give me an overview? Is that like across the whole, is there a specific department that's being targeted there? And are these turnover positions or new positions being added? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that one on. And through the chair to Councillor Krush. So in Q1, it's generally a combination of, the bulk is a combination of paid on-call firefighters as their recruitment drive lines up, and then lifeguards as well. There has been a few new staff in there full-time in, I believe, Public Works, Utilities, and Parks, perhaps, 1 each. In Q2, once this report comes back to council for that time, that's when our largest tranche for summer students onboarding comes. You'll see in the 20s onboarded, but largely that number consists of our casual staff and paid on call and aquatics lifeguards.
Councillor Blatz, then back to Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Dr. Allam. I'm glad to see that we are now going to have the electronic sign to sign up to receive your tax notices and your assessment notices electronically. And somewhere along the way, I obviously missed the memo, so I will be signing up myself. But I'm wondering if you could maybe provide us a little bit of that information for our coffee with council next week, and perhaps the people who do stop by to speak with us, we'd be able to give them some information on how to sign up. Because if we're at what, 40-some% or 50% of our utility bills, I would think that probably we could achieve almost that percentage as well with our tax notices. So I think the more information that we can spread and get that information out to our residents would be great. So if that could be possible.
Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Blatz, absolutely. I'll work with our CAO and get that information out to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. The grant writer position that we have within the town, do they also help other associations sort of connected to us to help write their grants? I'm just thinking of the museum that just presented. So do they help them write a grant so that it sounds like some of their grants, if they would have been more in depth or worded differently, maybe they would have gotten success.
Deputy Mayor to Councilor Overwater, that is a great question. Maybe I might ask our CEO if he knows if our grants coordinator helps a third party. I'm not aware of that.
Through the chair, generally, no, we don't assist in preparing the applications. For larger applications that involve like our facilities, some of our tenants are facilities, so the museum would be one who could be eligible. We will assist in reviewing an application, for example, or guiding them through the steps. A common example is a community facility enhancement program, which is run through Alberta, used to be Alberta Sports and Culture, whatever the ministry is called now. We have helped organizations apply for that, and not just through letters of support, but guiding them through the electronic system and all the steps in there. But we don't have the capacity to physically write grants for groups, but it's something we do try to help build that capacity. Does that answer your question?
Supplemental?
Sort of. So if, for example, if the museum was writing a grant, they could come and have the grant writer that we have here sort of go over it to see if there was something missing in it. Is that what you mean by helping them?
Yeah, hypothetically, if the grant's already written and they want our perspective on it, certainly we would be glad to do that.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to either the director or to the CAO. I know we've certainly had a concerted effort and focus on reducing the town debt, and that's evident in the debt service to revenue ratio and the decline there over the couple of years. And I know you've got as your initiatives coming forward the long-term financial plan and the capital planning strategy, but just wondering if either of you could share some preliminary thoughts. Our debt service to revenue ratio 6.59. You said the benchmark's 20, which indicates to me we potentially have some room to borrow there. What are the preliminary thoughts around balancing the tax increase potentially in future with incurring more debt from a strategic perspective, from an asset management perspective, or should I just be quiet and wait for the strategic direction to come forward? Thank you.
Just clarification through the chair. Could you just repeat the last part? You're looking for?
Yeah, just kind of that, your preliminary thoughts going forward. We're building a couple of the pillars of the plan, the long-term capital plan and the capital planning, or the long-term financial plan and the capital plan. But clearly, if you go by benchmark, we've got room on our debt service to revenue side, right? We've got 6.59 currently. We've had a concerted effort to reduce that debt, but against a benchmark of 20%. So just wondering, just some general thoughts, preliminary thoughts, balancing borrowing with potential future tax increases from a strategic side.
I got you now. Thanks. And through the chair. So there's a multi-part answer to this, and actually Director Elim is brand new, so he hasn't gotten immersed in this side of it yet. Following the sale of ONET and last spring's, I believe we called it ONET closure report, we had the town's corporate plan passed by council following late summer, early fall. Essentially, 2031 is a key date for us for debt repayment, as that is when the OFL debenture is paid in full. And if no new debt is taken on, we'll be down closer to the, I believe it's the 20%, give or take, target, because debt ratio does change based on your revenue. So that right now is council's direction to the organization, to yourself, on what your target is. That we want to keep on paying down debt to our, I would say roughly $12 million, what I think was the calculation. What's missing from that, though, is part of your question. We don't have a robust asset management plan yet. We are working feverishly on it by Director Pedro, and that will tell us very important things, not just for like our Sportsplex roof, but our North Water Reservoir, our museum facility, all of those things. And that's why I believe the financial strategy or financial forecast, I believe it's called, in this report, it will help council decide if taxation is going to be a key driver in funding those asset rehabilitation, or if it's going to be a mixture of new debt and taxation, and God willing, some successful grant applications as well. But yeah, it's forthcoming. But right now, the direction from council, which you will revisit, I believe, in the fall, once your strat plan is passed and the corporate plan is back before you, if the focus on debt reduction based on that 2031 $12 million time frame and balance is still what you want to see.
All right, with no further questions, I will now ask for the motion. Councillor Blatz, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I move that the committee accepts the Corporate Services Quarterly Report as presented for information.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 3.3. We have the Highway 27 Functional Plan Review. I will ask again on CAO Williams for introduction. The floor is yours.
Thank you once again. Before I turn it over to Director Pedro, who will lead this, the functional plan, which is now many years old, was presented in the last council term, approximately 2023. As a reminder to council, the 2024 signalization study was presented in, I believe, later 2024, early 2025. So the purpose of this presentation is just to summarize for council what the work that has been done by Alberta Transportation on future Highway 27 planning to date, and it also touches base on some recommendations from administration to council, what we've been working on with our colleagues in Alberta Transportation for the future of planning for the highway corridor. Without further ado, I'll turn it back to Adrian and he'll lead us through this.
Good afternoon, Council. Happy to share with you some progress that's been made and some of our concerns going forward. So I won't go through the entire interview. We'll just jump right in. So on the next slide, please. There we go. Perfect. So background. So why was a functional plan needed back in, almost 20 years ago? Highway 27, as most people know, serves two confliction purposes at once. One being it's obviously a major provincial highway that runs through town, and it also serves the needs of area residents and businesses, creating quite the few conflicts for us. The access situation was unsustainable, as noted in the report, and as we'll touch on later on in this presentation. There's far too many accesses along the highway, much more than the province and town would like to see. Offset intersections were creating compound risk, so that's where certain approaches, whether it's intersections of roads or approaches tying onto the highway, they're at varying locations. They're not actually in parallel, so that does create some turning movement issues. Traffic volumes were growing, especially at that time. Needless to say, they've grown even further to date. And then Highway 27 is technically classified as a future urban arterial corridor. However, it's not built to that cross section, so there's some limitations there. Moving on to the next. Some key strategies in the 2009 plan. Access reduction. So at that time, there were approximately 60 accesses onto the highway. The intent is to reduce that down to less than 30. So it required quite the effort there. New signalized intersection at 51st Avenue, new service roads at 65th, 57th to 55th Avenue, and then 51st Avenue again. Some intersection closures, which we will touch on shortly. Installing raised medians. There's quite a few outlined in the plan that have not been completed to date. So those are things that we will need to review once again. And of course, quite a few signalization changes, many of which have not been completed to date. So some progress and deviations since that time. Just a quick little list here. In 2010, there was the 65th Ave Service Road extension. In 2012, there was the Best Western, Boston Pizza, and now former town office access consolidation. That was completed. 51st Ave signalization was also completed in 2018. 2022, more recently, the Circle K road extension. That's behind the brick, and that's right turn in, right turn out along the highway. And in 2026, the 57th Ave intersection improvements that are about to be underway once the rain stops. Next slide, please. So looking at a few of those intersections, we did want to present council what the intended plan was back in 2009 and what's been developed to date. This, of course, is the 51st Avenue intersection, right behind A&W. As you can see on the left, hopefully see on the left, there was a proposed alignment for 57th Avenue to go north and connect to the west, up behind the Mountain View Plaza development there. That, of course, did not happen. The current development is shown on the right. That's simply a cul-de-sac that does service those multi-unit buildings currently. So that's a deviation. And there is, of course, some improvements that were done on the highway as part of the current 51st Avenue. However, it doesn't meet the entire intent of the 2009 plan. Next slide, please. The Highway 2A intersection, I think we can all acknowledge that this intersection is incredibly busy these days. In 2009, the intent was to put center median, proper right turn lane, and multiple right turn lanes, and to put in actual pork chops in the northwest corner to facilitate those turning movements. That has not been completed. That is one that we would assess. It does need to be reviewed sooner than later. As with many intersections, that could be something that happens with adjacent area developments or through a town initiative or a combination of both. However, it's certainly a need. Moving on to the next slide. 57th Avenue intersection. This one, there's quite the deviation. So as we can see on the left side, the intended design did have concrete medians, turn lanes, and some modifications to the south side of the intersection to close off that access. Present day, all we did at this location is just that turn for the westbound traffic. So significant deviation in terms of the original design. This is 54th Avenue. And similar to 52nd, only has a right turn lane that was added to it. This also does contemplate center medians and proper turn lanes and some realignment of some of the accesses from the businesses. So that's part of that initiative to reduce down to less than 30 accesses. There's quite a few in this intersection that need to be done. So again, this is something that would warrant further discussion on our side to see how this could be facilitated. I will stop here for any questions. I appreciate that was kind of a lot of information very quickly on these. So,
Thanks, Director Pedro. Open it to questions. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Director Pedro. Going back to the Highway 27 and two-way intersection there, that's been a bone of contention for many people for many, many years. And we're all very well aware that it's going to become more and more congested, particularly as the Northeast Industrial Park gets more and more developed. How would that fall in prioritization? Do we get to determine which of these intersections that will be looked at first by Alberta Transportation, or do they dictate, as usual, to us what gets to be done and at what time frame that these types of improvements will be made?
For sure. Through the chair, generally for an upgrade this substantial, it would be triggered by area development. So the northeast area in general does have a traffic impact assessment completed for it and potential upgrades. For an example like that, we would circulate that document to the province. They would either agree or disagree. We would put the cost on that upgrade to a developer and or in certain situations, there's a cost share between the municipality and the developer, depending on the scope of upgrades. So it'd really be dependent on what goes into a certain area, what the phasing looks like. Because this is a perfect example for this intersection, it may not require the full upgrade at one time, so it may be phased in. So there could be just a single turn lane put in, and then future upgrades required depending on certain thresholds. So really not a set answer, but it really depends on area development.
Right, with no further questions, I'll hand it to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the Director. Just, I guess along those same lines, you talked to and addressed a little bit of the process. Just wondering from a public engagement perspective, so you referenced certainly provincial input there, where and as needed. What about from the perspective of on some of these local area residents, local area businesses, where we may put in or recommend look at right-hand lane turn only? Can you speak to a little bit how and what that process would look like, or again, am I just too far ahead, or too far behind?
No, great question. Through the chair, something like the 2009 study that was completed, I obviously wasn't around, but reading the report, it does mention public consultation, or at least a working group at that time. Generally, for something of that scale, there would be public involvement. Now, if it were to get to the point where there's specific intersection upgrades, that would be kind of case dependent. There certainly is avenues to welcome public input. These designs are generally based on engineering criteria. There's always good ideas that come from the public, so it is prudent to have that input. So as part of potential review of this plan or updating further down the line, we would look at encouraging that.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, and through you to Pedro. For this one, you said that it requires a pork chop intersection we're being looked at. Is that the same as a slip lane?
Fairly close. So the slip lane would be generally your right turn lane. What we call pork chop, as terrible as that sounds, would be in this particular drawing in the northwest corner of the intersection. The blue hatched area kind of looks like a triangle. That would be the pork chop itself. Right about there. Yeah, so that would be the concrete median that delineates that turn lane there. And also would house the crosswalk and the signals.
Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Director Pedro. This study here was 2009, so 16 years ago. Does the Alberta Transportation come back and review these with the municipality at any certain time to look at what's changed, what's not the same as it was back in 2009, and do any updates to these plans moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, generally AT will not on their own come back and review. That's typically initiated by the municipality. Hence why we'll see later on in the presentation that we are proposing lobbying the province to try and get that updated.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, now with no further questions, I will hand the floor back to you, Director Pedro, to continue with the review. Thanks.
Perfect. So I did want to guide council through some of the planned intersection changes. So if we can go to the next slide. This is 57th Avenue. So as council would have seen briefly before, just wanted to provide an understanding of the upgrades that are about to be implemented. The large one being on the bottom end of the screen there is that little bulb. That is the cul-de-sac that we are installing to disconnect the service road access to 57th Avenue. Appreciate that it is maybe a little bit hard to see if we shift to 57th Avenue, which goes left to right on the top of the image there. We are showing the new addition of a dedicated left turn lane, both on the north and south legs of the intersection, as well as dedicated through lanes on the north and south as well. What this is going to do is just eliminate that conflict point that we had previously where a single lane was used for both through and left turn traffic. However, the road in that section is so wide that motorists were able to go around some people who are waiting, assuming they were over to the left. And so really delineating between those two turning movements will significantly increase the safety of traveling through that intersection. So very much looking forward to that. Along with those upgrades, we do have some modifications to the lane designation signs that are installed on the traffic signals. So just denoting which lanes do which turning movements. So it's fairly simple design, but given the traffic volumes that go through this intersection, it will be substantially improved in our opinion. Moving on to the next slide. So 65th Avenue. So this one has partially been completed. On the north side of 65th, over by the Shell and UFA, that alignment is what it represents today. However, on the south side, there are contemplated improvements there, being a longer median that extends to about midway to the credit union building, if not a little bit further, which does block the access from 65th onto the service road and just leaves the right in and right out. This is something that will eventually be triggered by traffic volumes, so it's very similar to the situation on 57th Avenue, where you do have quite a bit of traffic coming in and out of the service road, and the service road is far too close to the intersection on the highway. So really it's the same conflict point. On the next slide, 67A. So this is one that is contemplated in the 2009 study, and is one that the town is currently working on the design. We are about 95% through design and construction specifications for this project, and hoping that this happens fairly soon to open up some development opportunity. Now, the nice thing about this project is that the signals and the medians are already installed on the highway, so we're really just tying into existing infrastructure along Highway 27. This makes it far easier for us to work through this project. But as seen on the drawings there, we do have a new road that's being proposed north-south, as well as a connector road that will tie into a road plan that goes through the No Frills Loblaws property there. Next slide. Imperial Way. So this is an interesting intersection. In the 2009 study, the province noted that this intersection would eventually be closed, contingent that the service road be realigned as per the study, which I didn't include an image, but as a visual, the service road was intended to cut through the Aloha Mobile Home Park and eventually connect to the road behind the brick. Now, in that situation, would make sense to close that. As we know, with future developments and upgrades, that is quite distant project. We don't anticipate that realignment being completed in the near future. And that being said, we do feel from an administrative perspective that it does make sense to look at this intersection and see what improvements are needed. It is, 4 lanes of traffic trying to merge in and out of Imperial Way and 61st Ave on the south sides. So it's something that we should look at least in principle to see what upgrades are required. There's really only 2 options that you could do there, one being a roundabout and the second being signalization. Now, based on updated engineering design and traffic movements, we really don't want to install more signals. However, if they are the best fit, that's certainly something we could look at. That being said, it does require further assessment. And highlighting some current issues. So this is really just a study of the a summary of the 2024 signalization study that we performed, or at least the province performed with SEMA Engineering. Ultimately, we looked at all of the signals in town and determined what upgrades are required, if any. But it found that most signals in town required some sort of adjustment, whether they be through just timing adjustment or physical hardware improvements, anything from controller boxes or buttons that weren't working to wiring issues. So anything that was, a few $100s to tens of thousands of dollars, so there's quite a scope. And what it found is that not all the signals were functioning properly. We've been fortunate to work with the province and fix some of those minor issues over the years, namely at Highway 27 and 2A, and then 27th and 70th Avenue. So they completed those back in 2025. And we have made some pedestrian improvements on the islands, both in terms of the functioning buttons and improving the concrete to put in proper ramps for access. However, there are some larger issues that remain. Those 3 listed at the bottom, so 50th Avenue and the rail crossing synchronization. Most people may note that there currently is a synchronization between those signals and the railway. However, those are out of date, so they don't meet the new criteria that we would use to actually synchronize a crossing and a traffic signal. So there's many efficiencies that could be had at that intersection that would improve some traffic movements there. However, that is a substantial cost because it does require new hardware, both on the signal side as well as the intersection light side at the crossing. So big cost to that one. The 52nd Avenue lights are at the end of their life, so they would need to be replaced. The last replacement that I was a part of, that's anywhere between $200,000 to $350,000 for a set of lights. So it's not cheap. And then for 67A intersection, we do have quite a few dangerous driving practices. People love to go through the lights and do a quick U-turn to get to the south gravel access road there. So that, of course, involves further upgrade, like we're contemplating in the project mentioned earlier. And so, the functional plan. As Mayor Daly alluded to, the plan is quite old. And so, at this age, it is at the point where it should require an update. The Imperial Way closure doesn't make sense anymore. Highway 27 and 2A requires substantial upgrading, as noted, and some businesses are being adversely impacted with their access or lack thereof, and so that's something that needs to be reviewed. And of course, the town has grown and volumes have increased in 2009. That will change for upgrades. And in terms of next steps, so final slide, We are proposing to formally request an update to the functional plan. So we do need to work with the province on that and see what that appetite is. That's certainly something that could either be a cost sharing or something that they take on themselves, but that is to be determined. Obviously lobbying Alberta Transportation for the needed signalization upgrades. Ultimately, they're in the highway right of way. The town technically owns the signal, but there is some onus on them to assist with those upgrades to keep traffic moving. And then further integrating Highway 27 upgrades into our next offsite levy update. They would be eligible, however, they're currently not included, so it is something that makes sense to integrate. And then internally plan and budget for intersection safety and traffic flow improvements. This could be anything from fixing certain signals or doing any sort of concrete or pedestrian movement reviews to increase safety there. And then last point being explore how we can actually construct these 67A improvements to the south. So that is it for me. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Director Pedro. I'll open up to members of the committee for questions, starting with Councillor Blatz, then Orwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Director Pedro. So going back to the Imperial intersection there, that one at the Napa and bumper to bumper or whatever it is now. If we were to do signalization there rather than a roundabout, although I think a roundabout might be the more logical choice, particularly because we do seem to have some issues with signalization and synchronizing said signalization along that highway, either at that intersection, if we were to per se do signalization and signalization at highway or 57th Avenue there, are we going to have dedicated left-hand turn signals from north and south? Because that's part of the problem that we've had. East to west, we have at the highway or 57th Avenue, we do have the dedicated left turn signal, but we don't north to south. So would that be something that we would be looking at? And I know that that's, even though it's Alberta Transportation's highway, it is at our cost to upgrade any of those signalizations. And I would assume that that's something we would build into future budget plans to look into. But with these two maybe impending sooner than later, particularly 57th Avenue, are we going to be looking at that, having dedicated left-hand signals?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So it's not something that we contemplated as part of this latest project. Normally we would phase in the upgrade. So the upgrade at this point for 57th Ave is to put in the dedicated left turns. To put in any sort of preemption light or dedicated light for it would be the next step. And that would be completely on our cost. So we would see how these improvements work over the next few years. And if they do need to be addressed, then we would do so at that time. It wouldn't be a difficult thing to implement. The biggest issue with putting those preemption signals there is that you need to have the lanes designated, and where we would have that completed at this point. So it would really just be a matter of changing the signal head.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Going back to Highway 27 and Highway 2A, I've always wondered, do we have enough land? Do we own the land in order to make those turning lanes? Or would we have to purchase the land from that small little car dealership there? And, oh, I lost my picture. And on the other side where I believe it's the car wash that comes in from the north, do we own that land, or who owns that land? I just don't think that there's enough room there to all of a sudden make these turning lanes without having to purchase the land. Am I correct?
So through the chair, thank you for the question. So that intersection is a bit of a mixed bag. If I had GIS available, I could show you, but if you want to visualize, On the northwest corner by the 7-Eleven and the car wash there was land taken when that development went in, so there isn't sufficient room there to accommodate that northwest area expansion. On the southwest corner, there hasn't been any land, so it's fairly squared off. There's no corner cuts or anything on that property, so we'd have to look at potential acquisition there. On the southeast corner of the college side, there's quite a bit of right-of-way that the province owns for that, so there wouldn't be really any that's required there. On the north end, there is a fair size right-of-way, but it might be some required in front of the Best Western area. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but yes, there'd have to be some sort of land acquisition there.
Supplemental?
Yes, supplemental. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. So would the town be responsible for purchasing that, or would Alberta Transportation?
It depends on how the upgrades were instigated. It's the political answer. So if it were born, or if the upgrades were required as part of a development, developer would be largely responsible for those costs. If the town instigated the upgrades, the town would largely be responsible for those.
Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and thank you to Director Pedro for your presentation here today. My question is going back to the 57th Avenue intersection and 27 in regards to, we're talking lots about the changes on the north side of that intersection, and I didn't see in your presentation any explanation of what's going to happen on the south side and whether that is something that would be done at the same time as the implementation of the changes on the north side, just to do that whole complete intersection and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's certainly an issue on the south side. This project, we're not changing much physically on the south side outside of putting in the dedicated left turn lane and the through lane, so really just some line painting. We do intend to actually mill and pave a section of that south portion as well, because it's not in the greatest shape, so we're going to do that prior to line painting. However, we didn't look at modifying the 50th Street intersection there. It does require some changes. However, it's slightly further back than the North Service Road, so wasn't quite as critical at this time. It would require quite a few upgrades. And there's that private access on the southwest corner of the intersection. That one in the functional plan back in 2009 is something that Alberta Transportation would like to close. However, that's the only access into the parcel, so there's limited ability for us to change that right now.
Thank you.
Councilor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I'm not sure about that. It was always my understanding that on the south side of that sort of little mini mall kind of thing where the Headstone building is, that there's a road to the south of that road is what is supposed to be going into the back of there. And because that intersection is a nightmare when people are coming out of droplets or trying to get in there or whatever. But I think it would make more sense if that was closed and we actually did the road that was supposed to be proposed there to the south. Am I correct in understanding that that was supposed to be a road?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, that is correct. So that's an astute statement in the 2009 plan. It does, between the house and the corner, or the Headstone business, does show future access being at that location. There isn't currently an access there. We have been in quite a few conversations with the landowner. That is their future intent. So it is something that may happen in the near future because the landowner does recognize that the current access is not ideal. But it's not something that we can necessarily compel them to close and do right now. So we are just having constant conversation with that owner.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Director Pedro. That was also my understanding that that access was supposed to be on the south side of those buildings. But along that south side, at one point in time, I know we did discuss that there would be like a meridian or some kind of a barrier that went down the middle of 57th Avenue to eliminate people coming through that intersection and trying to turn left onto 50th, because I've seen some real near misses recently that people, you know, and it congests when you've got somebody that stopped and wants to make a turn and you're trying to get through traffic through there and merge, it becomes quite congested at that intersection. Is that something also that you've alluded to would be the future plans for that south side?
Excuse me, through the chair, yes, that would be something we can look at in the future. There's a few ways to facilitate that. So a lot of places, they temporarily could use movable guideposts as a bit of a trial to see how that goes, and then implement something more permanent. So it is just a matter of timing, I think, for that intersection, because it is quite highly trafficked, and I agree it would be failing if we did a proper assessment on it. But everything can be solved with bags of money.
Supplemental?
Well, kind of, sort of, but no, not really.
There's no other questions. Go ahead.
Okay. But going along to that, talking about mediums or some kind of a barrier down the highway, like on Highway 27 there particularly, at the Circle K and at the 7-Eleven, that is a dedicated right-hand turn only, but I can tell you that there's many times I've seen traffic that have stopped and have stopped traffic flow because they want to turn left from and into those businesses. Are Alberta Transportation going to encourage us at some point in time to put some type of a barrier down along those intersections to stop that? Or what is the plan, or has there been any discussion at all with that? I know one time I was at a meeting where they did say that was going to be done, but I mean, if this plan hasn't been reviewed since 2009, I don't have a lot of hope it's going to happen.
Through the chair, we haven't had recent conversations with Alberta Transportation where they've indicated anything to that degree. I would suggest that if this plan were to be updated, that would probably be one intersection that has a lot of attention put towards it. It is poorly designed. In all honesty, I know that was implemented recently. However, that right in and right out on the north side there, it has an insufficient radius, so it doesn't really cut people off from going in either direction. So it could have been implemented better, for sure.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the director. Just lots of information here, but something just you say formally request an update to the Highway 2 functional plan. Looking into your crystal ball and with your professional judgment, what kind of timeline are we talking about for some of these things? Is this my lifetime, or beyond that to my grandchildren, or who knows? It's a best guess. Thank you.
Through the chair, I would certainly hope it's within your lifetime. In all honesty, we've had high-level discussions with Alberta Transportation on it. I'm not sure how much of a formal appetite there is, but I think they do see the value there. So at some point this year, we would officially start those discussions, and hopefully within the next 3 or 4 years have a better timeline or understanding when that can be updated.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and this might be my final question. Going back to the 57th Avenue intersection there, where we're going to be closing off that access road, which is a part of the original plan. I know that there was notification went out to the businesses in the Imperial area there, to let them know what the plan was. And I'm assuming that included in that was all the information of what the original plan was. Was there any feedback from those businesses with concerns? I mean, other than we have one business owner, but I wondered if there were any further businesses that had raised similar concerns.
Through the chair, when this project was first approved, we did send out a more restricted area of notices to area landowners. We didn't quite capture all the way to Imperial Way, so certainly something we could have done better. In May, we did issue letters to essentially, I think it was about 500 different residents and landowners, including Imperial, Vistas, Shannon, everybody, pretty much everybody to the north. And outside of the one business that we heard from, we haven't heard from anyone else.
Thank you for that.
All right, with no further questions, I will thank Director Pedro for the review, and I will ask for the motion. Councillor Krush.
Thank you. I make the motion that the committee accepts the Highway 27 Functional Plan Review presentation as information.
All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. That moves us to item 3.4. We have the Economic Development Strategy Engagement Report, and I will ask CAO Williams for introductions. You have the floor.
Thank you once again. Yeah, sure, I can have this. I won't spend too much time going through this, as council has been presented several times now on the ECDEV strategy, and you approved the engagement plan. So the draft strategy, the current final form of the draft strategy, is hyperlinked in the cover letter, and you will see that for what I hope is final approval next week. On the engagement side, as you're well aware, based on, at the very minimum, this 2-page bulletin as it summarizes, this is 3+ years in the making, starting with the Brood project in 2023, which completed in 2025. Starting in early 2026, we commenced a more focused engagement as Brood focused on the local and regional business community and key stakeholders. As is summarized, we have visited the local Chamber of Commerce, Uptown Olds College, our all clubs service groups, and conducted Coffee with Council plus a public survey which closed last week. I don't think much has changed in terms of the direction or the sense of where this ECDEV strategy should go. The survey in itself had a modest return. I think there was 81 responses, more or less, and those results are, I believe, included in here. If not, we can certainly send them to you. And that survey was largely echoing the strategy's points, perhaps, making more pointed questions on things like attraction of egg tech and value-added egg industries. The open comment section, not surprisingly, had some data center focused questions. Most actually were either positive or neutral on data centers, and that seems to be anecdotally the flavor with the business community as opposed to some of the citizenry, certainly in East Olds we've been seeing lately. I would say largely positive out of the 81 responses, with a few obviously negative comments towards data centers, but largely supportive of the Old College relationship and of the growing focus on agriculture and what could come from that as our core anchor industrial business, given our geography and the cohabitation with Olds College. And then on the draft strategy, it looks about the same. It has been tweaked and updated in places. A vision statement has been added, which I think could be a focus of conversation, if not today, then next Monday. It reads that Olds is open for business, grounded in agriculture, driven by innovation, and built for growth. So something that kind of summarizes, highlights the mantra of the strategy, in my opinion. But outside of that, I won't belabor this any further. If you have any questions on the engagement that commenced over the last few months, which many of you were a part of in various ways. This is a living document, of course, that as things change, local or macroeconomic, it can be updated. But it's, again, the strategy is council and the town saying to yourselves, our community, the broader economy, that we are open for business, that we want to grow, and this is how we think we can grow, our competitive advantage, so to speak. But happy to take any questions on this or the strategy itself or anything in between.
Thank you, CAO Williams. Yeah, I did find the top results of the word clouds pretty interesting to review. I'll now ask the members of the committee for any questions. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Director or to CAO Williams. I was impressed with this. I was impressed with the engagement. I thought that it was well done. Maybe we could have had better responses, perhaps, but maybe not. But anybody I've talked to that is aware of that or aware of what our ECDEV is trying to do right now in the community is very impressed. So I just wanted to pass that on, and compliments to your ECDEV department and your planning department and your admin staff that have supported this and been working along with this, getting this strategy to council. So I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the CAO. In one form or another, because as you acknowledged, we've been going through and developing the strategy and working on various initiatives related to the strategy, and I think I always ask a same or similar question, and I'll ask it again or something along those lines. Everything always points to, or one of the things it points to is, and you touched on it, ag industry, ag tech, the agriculture industry, you know, given our environment here, given our linkage and the existence of the leading ag college, Olds College there and everything. Just wondering if you could talk a little bit going forward, how do we operationalize that now? You know, because the question I get is, why don't we have ag industry here, given all the positive indicators that we have? And along those lines, can you talk a little bit about how that works with the big funnel? So we're going to get all these, hopefully, investors, developers, interested parties. How do we recruit those people? How do we link in with them? Is it through a coffee session? Can you just talk a little bit about that? And I guess ultimately, what's the obstacle or obstacles that are preventing us from landing that ag industry related business? Thank you.
Thanks, and through the chair, that's a great question, very apt. I would also correct you, and I know you know this, but just for checking the box, we do have many ag-related businesses here, whether that be Premier Tech or the fertilizer companies, and in any of our industrial parks there are ag businesses here, and they're already a very important part of our economy. But you're right, we want to grow that, and the cluster analysis that was part of the Brood program says that obviously ag is our fundamental industry and we should focus on that. One of the issue is rural Alberta is really big, and rural Alberta is pretty unanimous on attracting ag industry. So we're competing, I believe, in a very competitive space. So the question, I think, is more what are our barriers versus what are our advantages? Obviously the advantages is Olds College. I can speak to that a bit in a moment, but I like giving bad news first. And two primary barriers stand out, I would say. The first is the lack of serviced industrial land that we have. These businesses tend to be larger in nature than the 1 acre plot that we can sell or can attract businesses here for smaller scale things like warehousing, for example. You know well the challenges in the Southeast Industrial, specifically on 68th Street, and the lack of sanitary lift that was foregone there. That is a key barrier. Second one is our utility costs, because people point to things like flour mills being built in Red Deer County, and they think, why can't we have a flour mill here? Of counties having more ability to, say, keep taxes lower than towns like us. The bigger piece, I would argue, is our utility costs, that oftentimes in rural areas you can tap into a well or at the very least, not have to send your effluent, your wastewater, into a regional commission. The town of Olds, we buy our potable water from the Mountain View Regional Water Commission. That'd be awkward. And then we have to send that effluent after it's produced, let's say manufacturing processes or whatever flour mills do with, I'm sure it requires abundance of water, send that back to the city of Red Deer, around $3 per cubic meter, which 1 cubic meter is about 220 gallons. It's very expensive. So that's a competitive disadvantage right there. So it's not as simple as saying, we have Olds College, let's find some egg businesses. We have to find the right egg businesses, and trying to compete on the large scale manufacturing, we lose pretty quickly just based on utilities and higher land costs. I think more minor barriers would be the workforce and housing. This was a recurring theme in the Brood analysis, that to support, at the time it was things like ethanol and biofuels and pea processing extraction. It requires a larger labor force, like in the few hundreds, for example. And there's just not a lot of confidence Olds has the ability to absorb those types of jobs. And at the same time, though, our housing market was very constrained also. So employers were pointing to that. I think we've done a lot of work in that space since 2024, so it's less of a concern now. But it will form part of our, the strategies approved, for example, how we pitch to those investors. With Olds College, I think, even though we've had a great relationship for a lot of years, I would say it was more complementary than integrated in our relationship. And that's what the strategy is trying to change. And that's what our engagement with them last month said, that we want to, we want to become more deliberate in our relationship, as opposed to just coexisting and waiting for something that makes sense for both of us. I think there's examples of that happening already, besides the engagement, the deliberate engagement with the strategy between ourselves and the college. We have the recreation study that's ongoing between the college, the county, and ORE and Chinook's Edge, where we're trying to see how we could co-locate facilities and enable shared programming, some of it which in the egg space. And we recently signed a MOU as well between the town and the college, Guy, for, is it Arborist Services? Yeah, between the town of Olds and the Olds College's Arborist program, where their students can receive in real life, in the field, educational experience through helping us maintain our tree canopy. So I think this will take time, and I believe the college is very much looking for ways to expand their research arm and get more integrated with egg businesses, and there's certainly opportunity there, and we want to focus on that 110%. That was very long-winded, I just realized as I said that comment, so hope that answered the question.
All right, with no further questions, Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to CEO Williams. You had mentioned that we had presented to several groups within our community. Have you heard back from any of those in regards to what they thought of the strategy, any changes or anything that they're really glaring for them within this strategy plan?
Thanks, and through the chair, we haven't heard back formally from each organization. We did send each of them the strategy, or sorry, the survey on the strategy once it opened, and I believe the consensus was instead of submitting, let's say, one statement on behalf of the chamber, on behalf of Uptown, they were just going to send the survey to their membership and have it that way. And I believe there was a significant component of business owners in the survey as well. So no formal submission. We obviously spoke face to face, as I think you were all there for 2 of those conversations, and Mayor Daley, you for most of them. But no, I believe just participation in the survey, which 81 results is actually better than I was expecting, honestly.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Krusch.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to CAO Williams. Just on the survey, remind me, is there any guardrails to make sure that people taking the survey are within our community, or could any Tom, Dick, or Harry from anywhere around the world just get on our website and do that survey?
Right, no, we don't geofence it, for example. So this actually chart up there is it's a self-reporting honor system. So tell us where you're from and what you think. So there's no way to do this, but people self-report, and obviously most either live in Olds or own a business in Olds, and you could select more than one, of course. Obviously 2 were students and 3 from elsewhere, but we have no way to verify.
All right, with no further questions, I will thank CEO Williams for the report and will ask the committee for a motion. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I make the motion that we accept the Economic Development Engagement Report as presented.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving to section 4, business. Our first item is 4.1, community service policy review. And yet again, I'll turn it over to CEO Williams for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and Director Lapointe is with us to lead council through these policy reviews. Over to Guy.
Looks like I'm the last one standing here at the end of this table. Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor Taylor and Council. Today, administration is presenting the updated community grants policy for Council's consideration first. The purpose of the revisions is to modernize the policy, improve clarity and transparency, and better align the program with Council's priorities and town's strategic plan. The updated policy clearly outlines the intent of the program, which is to support community organizations, events, programs, and initiatives that provide measurable benefit to residents and contribute to community well-being. Some of the key changes include introducing clear eligibility requirements and definitions to improve consistency and transparency in decision-making, establishing defined funding streams including project or event grants, capital grants, and in-kind support, adding guiding principles focused on accountability, community impact, sustainability, and equity, formalizing evaluation criteria so applicants better understand how their applications are assessed, and clarifying reporting and accountability expectations for successful applicants. The changes also help ensure municipal funding is allocated fairly, responsibly, and in a way that supports community priorities while improving administrative consistency. Overall, the updated policy creates a clearer and more structured framework for administering community grants while maintaining flexibility to respond to emerging community needs. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have on this policy.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll open the floor to the committee for discussion. Very little discussion needed. Thank you very much, Director Lapointe. I will ask the committee for a motion. Mayor Daley, please.
Excuse me, are we making a motion just on 804C, or are we open for discussion on 901 at this point as well?
Just on 804C, please.
Do you want them separate motions then?
Yeah. It says one motion written. I think that's fine, leaving it as one. Thank
Okay,
you.
then I do have questions on 901C, but you haven't gone through that yet, so.
My apologies. I'll let Director Lapointe continue.
Thank you very much. Administration is now presenting the updated recreation facility booking policy for Council's consideration. The purpose of these revisions is to create a clearer and more consistent framework for how municipal recreation spaces are allocated and managed. The updated policy reflects the increasing complexity of facility scheduling and helps balance community access, operational efficiency, and the financial sustainability of town facilities. Some of the key updates on this one include clearly defining allocation priorities for municipal programs, local nonprofit organizations, returning user groups, tournaments, schools, and private rentals. Formalizing the annual intake process for seasonal bookings, tournaments, and special events. providing administration with greater flexibility to reserve or pre-allocate space for tournaments and events that provide community or economic benefit, introducing clearer provisions around conditional bookings, deposits, insurance requirements, and finally adding guidance for off-season allocation to help maximize facility utilization and support alternative programming opportunities. The updated policy provides clear direction for both administration and users while supporting the long-term sustainability of the town's recreational facilities. And once again, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks. I'll open up for discussion on 901C. We'll start with Mayor Daley and then Councillor Krusch, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Director Lapointe. In the past, there has been a number of concerns that have been brought up in regards to block booking of our facilities by the minor sports organizations within town. And more and more I'm hearing that these block bookings are going unused and the facilities are sitting empty when people are looking to take advantage of rentals on our facilities. Is there anything, and I don't want to get into your wheelhouse here and into the procedure or the way that you manage these requests, but is there anything that is a confirmation date that is put into place to ensure that these facilities are being utilized to their fullest efficiencies going forward? I know I'm hearing lots of people are keeping an eye on that when they're saying the facilities are booked, and then they're showing up to check on it, and the facilities are dark. So I'm just wondering, looking at this policy, whether there's any guardrails or deadlines that need to be met by people that do these bookings.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Mayor Daley, absolutely, that's a consideration on our part. I would think that the procedure right now is not written to protect us in that way. Our intention is to get the policy in place to begin with, and then we'll look at the procedures specifically. That said, I'm only hearing this in regards to one facility. I think most of the other facilities are operating pretty efficiently in terms of the booking process. So we are going to address that item specifically with that facility.
Excellent, thank you. That's really good to hear.
Councillor Krusch and then Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to Director Lapointe. My question bounces off of Mayor Daley's. I've been hearing the same thing from some peers in the community, and I think their bigger issue is that a facility can be booked, not utilized, and then the booker doesn't have to pay for that booking if they don't use it. So there might be a tactic going on to block others from using a building. Has there been any discussion on changing the way bookings are being paid? Like, if you book a building and don't use it, you should probably still have to pay for it, in my opinion. Have there been any discussions on changing that particular policy?
Again, through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Krusch, again, that is a consideration on our part, that the policy is what we wanted to get through first. I think we talked about some of these items in regards to, say, the Sportsplex, some time ago as well, where again, we want prepayment for some of these facilities. Some of the facilities don't lend themselves very well to that as well. I mean, there's weather-related issues when you're dealing with outside facilities. But as a rule, we'd like to look at prepayment for bookings as a way to sort of mitigate the concerns that you're talking about.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. To Director Lapointe, 4.5 where it says conditional allocations, maybe we should say instead of may require a deposit, will require a deposit that cannot be, if you don't show up, then that deposit is lost. You don't get it back. Maybe somewhere in there we need to reword that. I don't know if the rest of council kind of agrees with that or not, but then I think maybe groups would be more inclined to not cancel maybe on a whim
Through the Deputy Mayor, may is a wimpy word, and it should be will. So that is something we'll make a change on at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks. Seeing no other questions, we'll go back to the motion for both with Mayor Daley, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I move that the committee accepts policy 804C and 901C as presented, and that they be brought to a future council meeting for consideration with amendment to 901C as suggested.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Director Lapointe. This moves us into section 4.2, the Privacy Management Program. And I'll turn over to CAO Williams for introductions. The floor is yours.
Thank you once again. So all of the relevant policies and procedures are hyperlinked in here, so I won't navigate them myself. I'll speak at a high level introducing each of them, and then council can ask questions from there. One note that some of you did send some typos within these documents. Do appreciate it. The heads up, we'll get those corrected for next week when we bring it back to council. So last Monday, I was not present, but I did hear the word that you passed bylaw 2026-18, I believe, which was the privacy management program bylaw, and that acts as kind of the overarching guide to how the town will implement the privacy management framework in the town. To back up a bit, the reason we're doing this is the province decided that we didn't quite have enough work to do, so they changed the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Act, or FOIP, to the Access to Information Act, and then a separate act, the FOIPA Act, which now they operate as two separate legislative entities. So this framework is legislatively driven by the province, and what's before you today is how we will seek to accomplish our pre-existing roles in access to information requests and protecting personal privacy, with a main new entry to the privacy regime called the Privacy Management Program. I won't spend too much time on that. It is within the language heavily here, but essentially any program we have or implement, most notably things like software, we have to now conduct privacy assessments on them before they are rolled out. So we have started already. We started several months ago as we started drafting these policies, and did them in real time to help us hone what's going to work in theory and in practice. But our privacy assessments are ongoing, and they will be a major part and time component to this framework. Some of you have also asked me about a records management position that we once held. You're correct. Up until the end of 2023, probably into mid-2024, the town did employ a records management FOIP coordinator, as we call the position. That position was cut in budget 2024, in advance of budget 2025, for cost saving. And that was the restructuring time to make us, and with the increase in ATI requests we've been seeing, council may see that a request for that position being implemented here in the nearer future than we had originally anticipated. But to get back to why we're here. What you see before you is a few policies and a few procedures. Procedures are administrative documents. They're not approved by council. They're just there for information and change based on the policy. They basically tell staff how we expect them to implement council's direction. The primary document is the Privacy Management Program Framework, which is the overarching policy, subservient to the bylaw, of course. And that basically is a public-facing master document. It kind of consolidates our narrative around our privacy management program and how we will implement it and the expectations. Most importantly, it tells you who is responsible for implementing the privacy program, and that is the privacy officer, again, a provincial mandated position, and it appoints the director of corporate services to that role. The most important position is the access to information coordinator. That is the person who actually does the grunt work in conjunction with the departments and staff relevant to each request, to ensure not just requests are being fulfilled according to the Act, but also they are ensuring privacy is being protected through things like record redaction or compliance with legislation around protecting personal and business privacy, which are both major considerations we have. Currently, the Executive Support Council, Ms. No, is the ATI coordinator. One of her many duties, by the way, so hence why we can't always get this out in record speed for Council's consideration, FYI. You'll see policy 235C as well in there, privacy management policy. Kind of establishes core standards. It directs administration to develop those procedures as well. It's intentionally brief because the procedures do get into the minutia of how the program will be implemented, but again, we include the procedures just to keep you informed and certainly free to ask questions on those and suggest improvements. I won't go over the procedures in depth. I don't think there's nothing really that new there. Again, outside of those privacy impact assessments, I mentioned it in my introduction. Everything we've been doing for decades. This is not brand new to us. It's just a new set of rules and new fancy titles. AI policy, that's the last thing I'll speak to. Now, this is something we've been working on, thinking about for a while, because ChatGPT and Anthropic, Google Gemini, a lot of people have been using AI in the organization for the better part of a year and a half now. And so this policy tried to put some parameters on that. We want to make sure people are using it responsibly, that we're giving them standards on what we expect them or allow them to use it for versus what we don't. How it relates to this, though, is we want to make sure that people are not putting sensitive information into AI programs. And depending on the sensitivity, some information cannot go in there, in our view, whereas some less sensitive information may, if it's what we call an enterprise account. Basically a town paid for subscription run through town email addresses, and something that we can, at our IT level, control and then audit, for example. So this is us trying to put parameters onto that. So I think when you consider the AI policy today or next Monday, don't focus so much on how we're trying to guide staff or allow staff to use it, because that's going to be very fluid. AI is still very fluid and in its infancy. Certainly ask questions or suggestions. This is more here for, is the privacy language we're proposing what you expect to be for your privacy management program. But to close, your bylaw is finished. That was the minor part of this, what you did last week. These documents are much more of the vehicle of what delivers the provincial requirements and council's expectations for the privacy management program. We'll bring these forward on June 8th to meet the June 11th deadline, provincial deadline. But happy to take any questions now on what you see before you.
Thank you, CEO Williams. I'll open it up to any discussion to be had. Looks like there's very little discussion needed. Pretty self-explanatory, I suppose. Oh, one from Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to the CEO. So I'm just trying to replay your comments here. So the privacy officer is the director of corp services, and the administrative assistant to the CEO is the information coordinator. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So can you just talk a little bit about the interplay, the interaction from yourself, who has overarching responsibility for the organization as the CAO, relative to the privacy officer and the information coordinator as requests come in? And then can you talk a little bit about how those are determined and fees estimated? I know our fee schedule is set annually, But how does that process work in terms of the scope, the breadth, the depth of those requests? I know I've got a bunch of mini questions all embedded in there, but I'll throw it over to you. Thank you.
That's part of your charm. Who am I kidding? No, through the chair. They're good questions. So when we had our full-time position here, the records management and FOIP coordinator, it was a pretty standalone process. It worked, and I barely knew it existed. Now that it's in my office, still the ATI coordinator does the bulk of the work. If council passes this policy on next Monday, the director of corporate services will take over as the privacy officer. But the issue that exists, though, given that the ATI coordinators in my office, that our Department of Corporate Services doesn't have capacity to take on that function, I'm going to have an adjudicating role that when the ATI coordinator is undertaking a search for records, for instance, and asking people across the organization, and if her time is limited or people aren't responding, I'm going to have to get involved and tell people what the priority is, that if they're working on X, but we need Y. So that's still going to be my role until we work out the true capacity. The designation of the privacy officer, that's what we hope to get to, because it doesn't really belong in my office. It's not a great fit. I don't want to do it, to be honest with you. But we just don't have the capacity anywhere else to accomplish it. On the fee estimates, like the workload, I guess, of ATI requests was the flavor of your question. There is a fee set by the Act. The provincial Act does, I believe I have it here. They do state that for ATI requests, after you submit your $25 application fee, we then take that back and we search through our records. So that can be email, text messages, Microsoft Teams messages, GIS software programs, whatever the request asks for. And we build how many files. So one email is generally one file, one text message, whatever it might be. And so we get a list of files. And the Schedule 1 of the Access to Information Act says that $6.75 per quarter hour charged is the maximum you can charge. So that is, based on my expert arithmetic skills, to $20-something an hour, let's call it that, which is not going to recover our time, of course. Now, there is direction from the Privacy Commissioner's Office, not official policy, that 2 minutes per record is an allowable estimate. That if you return 100 records, you can say this is probably going to take you 200 minutes of man-hour minutes. So when we have small kind of requests, it's much easier to guess, because usually you see, okay, you have 60 emails, those emails have 4 attachments, and then we have, a text message or something like that. The problem is what we've been getting on different files, you can guess which ones, very broad asks where we're returning thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of records, so much so that we can't even properly estimate. So we have to give what we think is a conservative estimate, and then we've been breaking that down by half. So saying, okay, 1 minute per record, that's our best estimate we can give. Now, we don't know that. The problem is when you return 5,000 records in your search, you know that 5,000 records may not be relevant, but you search by keywords, you search by author, you search by whatever. You still have to go through 5,000 records to see if they're relevant. So that's where the time comes from. Now, if council feels that is egregious, for instance, certainly you have the power to give me direction on that or further hone your fee schedules or expectations. But it's a lot of staff time these take, and you have to be careful of vexatiousness in this space as well. So I think we're doing a great job with the resources we have available. Some people disagree, of course, but that's life.
Councillor Blatz, then Councillor Rowater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to CO Williams. So perhaps maybe then at our next service level review, that is a position council should be reviewing and discussing fulsomely, is to get a privacy officer or a coordinator and maybe a records management shared position back, a business study back, so that we can review that for budgets for future, particularly if it's taking an awful lot of town's time. And I've spoken with a couple of other councillors at other communities that are also seeing an increase in these ATIA requests, and it's taking a significant amount of time away from staff and other duties. So I would like to see that come forward at service level if possible. Thank you.
CEO Williams.
And through the chair, yeah, I think it will have to come back once we better understand what could be a baseline capacity, our baseline expectation. We probably want to analyze it in relation to our IT function as well, to see if we can provide, let's say, resources to both maybe, or to our human resources function, or to something else in corporate services. Right now, I don't want to hire a standalone, ATI coordinator, for example, but hopefully when council sees it, it will be a broader analysis of touching a couple gaps in the organization. But yeah, your point is correct that council will discuss this at a future service level.
Thank you.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. So just so I'm clear on this, so if we get a request in, then somebody, particularly somebody, has to go through, get all the information, and then they redact it. And then is there somebody who has to go through and make sure that it was redacted properly? So then you're looking at more double, triple time of our staff. So is that what happens? Just so I'm clear on that.
Yes, and through the chair, yeah, great. I can actually explain that. I should have started with that. So a request comes in, people fill out the form, pay the $25, and ideally most requests have keywords or people they want searched. Some requests come in, search the entire organization for these keywords, and that is where things go off the rails. But let's say it's a ATI request for my office. My office has 5 people in it, and it has a subject or topic. So we do searches. So we do an email search, our text messaging search. If relevant, we'll search our GIS database or other software we have. And then, so that involves 5 people. So they take roughly, well, let's hope no more than 30 to 60 minutes of their time to send to the ATI coordinator who has organized this request their estimate, their number of files, and the comment on how deep they think they have to dive, how comprehensive their review has to be. The ATI coordinator then builds a fee estimate based on that. And then if that fee estimate is paid, they have to put a 50% deposit down. Then everyone starts their work. And that involves gathering the files and then sending them to the ATI coordinator, who then has to review them and redact them according to privacy legislation. So it's a very time-consuming, cumbersome process. Yeah.
All right. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so then for our vast listening audience and so on, the people that will be tuning in after the fact, I guess the bottom line message from an ATIA request is the more brief you are, more appropriately, the more specific you are, the better it is for all concerned parties, right? In terms of the requester, as well as from administration in terms of trying to fulfill the request. Specificity is the key, correct?
Thanks, and through the chair, correct. And it's not the town trying to hide something, but we also have to be prudent that we're not excluding something based on what we think the person wants. The more specific, the better. I'll give you one request a few weeks ago that was submitted was for all communication, everything between me and 5 staff, for I think a year. Like that would be tens of thousands of records, right? And the Act even prohibits that. There is a section in the Provincial ATI Act that says like there has to be some specificity. You just can't ask for all the CAO's emails, right? That's as juicy as it may seem to people, not that exciting, nor do I have that much time. But fortunately, the Act does give us some cover in saying no to people who are just looking to find something when they don't have, when they don't have an actual interest.
Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, and through you to CAO Williams. So clarification is that this is a initiative that comes down from the provincial government through legislation that they have passed to change it from the FOIP to the Access to Information Act, and all municipalities have to do this, as Councillor Blatz alluded to, talking with other communities, that they're all under the gun to get information out under this format, as well as meet the deadlines that have been set out, and the fees and all that other stuff. So in your opinion, and talking with other communities, how are we doing as far as meeting these deadlines? And for myself, when I read this package on the weekend, I was very impressed at the amount of work that is done here. And is there more work to do yet after this is done to conclude and get a full package of this ATI to align with the provincial government?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Daley. Yes, this is provincially led. It is replacing a long existing process, updating it, I believe, to match what has become, nuanced or best practices elsewhere in the country. And yes, there's still more work to do, certainly to hone our procedures, for example. And I wouldn't be surprised, given not just the recency of this legislation, but the large-scale changes to the provincially led changes to our requirements, that you will see policy adjustments coming forward within the next year to adapt to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw provincial clarifications as well, because very few municipalities have implemented this in full prior to the June 11th deadline. So there's going to be learning as we go, and a natural evolution in how we do things, how the province sees those results, and there are, I think, accountability being achieved.
Supplemental.
And to my understanding also that these requests for ATIA are all reported back to the government as well for their statistical records as well. And then you feel that there's going to be even more changes coming forward after they look at those records that are coming in from the municipalities? Or do you think it's going to be just as the program grows, they're going to be tweaking things here and there?
Yeah, start with the second part. It's my own opinion that when these large changes happen, you never get it right on the first try, and it's not a slight to them nor to us. There's going to be things that were unforeseen and improvements, and places like Alberta municipalities or RMA, they'll, I'm sure, provide the government updates and concerns. So I just think naturally you see some changes happen, whether locally here or at the provincial level, as these large programs roll out and theory meets practice. On the provincial review or decision piece, we do send them every year through what's called our statistical information return, how many ATI requests we have submitted, and I'm sure this ATI update does give us even more requirements to report on. That being said, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, we have to send them those privacy impact assessments that we do. So I believe, I'm not sure it was Shyla or Marcy, at last count, they were nearing 10,000 impact assessments that were sent by municipalities in recent months. And they have an office of 8 staff. So hence probably why this is going to change a bit. Then, of course, people who submit ATI requests and they're not satisfied with our answers or our efforts or our fee estimates, they have the right to complain to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner as well, who can conduct an investigation and determine if the municipality was out of bounds in its implementation and execution of the privacy framework. So there's checks and balances in place.
supplemental.
This will be my last one, for sure. In relationship to previous years, let's say comparing 2025 to 2026, where we are now, do you know the numbers in comparison to what we've done in last year's timeframe as compared to this year's timeframe as far as these requests?
Through the chair, I don't have the exact numbers. We're certainly trending much higher not in volume. Most of our requests still come down to property searches that when we have heavy development happening here or proposed to happen. So environmental requests, land title searches, fire inspection reports. Those are our most common ATI requests, and those are dealt with pretty efficiently. What we're seeing now, though, is large-scale requests, fewer in number, but much higher in volume come through. And so more volume across the board and more very complex requests where we're seeing, anywhere from dozens to hundreds of man-hours being estimated to complete these requests. So, and talking to colleagues across the province, even for different reasons, they're seeing just this activity pick up more and more. So I believe it's going to be a realm that we're going to have to invest in for the foreseeable future.
Thank you very much.
All right, with all the discussion done, I will call upon Councillor Overwater to make the lengthy motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I move that the committee accept for information the Privacy Management Program and Artificial Intelligence Government Suite as presented, consisting of, Marcy, do you want me to name them all? As listed, 1 to 6. And further, that the committee notes that the Privacy Management Policy 235C and Artificial Intelligence Policy 236C will be brought forward to the next regular council meeting for formal consideration and adoption. Thank you.
All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, that moves us to item 5, closed session. When council goes into a closed session for continued participation in the virtual meeting, stay online in the live stream platform, and the meeting stream will be replaced by a graphic. When the graphics are removed, that will indicate that the meeting is ready to reconvene. May I have a motion to enter closed session at 3:27 p.m. for item 1?
I so move.
Mayor Daley.
Yes, I move that we move into closed session at 3:27 p.m. with, including Doug. No, I don't have to do that. Okay. So just move into closed session at 3:27.
This section as well.
Oh, I'm not down there. Item number 1, ATIA Section 22, confidential evaluations. Chief Administrative Office performance evaluation.
Thank you. All in favor? That passes unanimously. At that time, we will now clear the gallery, and I'll also call a 5-minute recess just to get prepared. All right, now we're coming out of closed session, and we will do the rise and report. Councillor Cook, if you could make the motion, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. I move that council accepts the Transitional Solutions, Inc. CAO Performance Evaluation Report for information.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, and with that, we have reached item 7, adjournment. If there's no objections, I will adjourn the meeting. Seeing none, we are adjourned at 4:01 p.m.